going on, community? Hey, heading to Sturgis. I've made a couple of videos so far, and now I'm still in upstate New York. Well, getting ready to cross into Pennsylvania here shortly, and about 50 miles from Erie, PA. Just taking my time. Towing the bike behind me. I'm heading out solo. I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Hopefully, some helpful hints to people with their bikes. I've been doing this a long time. Drag race for a long time. Built motors and tuned them. In cars industry, but I've been around motorcycles since I was 5 years old. I've had probably hundreds of them. My kids race as well too. But anyways, heading out to Sturgis Bike Week Rally. I just came back from Gettysburg Bike Week last Sunday. Not this Sunday, the previous Sunday. And it was hot. It was real hot down there. Probably heat index was like 105, 106. I'm wearing boots and pants, and it was warm. But you know that affects the bikes a lot. Obviously, the Harleys are air pumps. Air cooled, oil cooled. I have a CVO Limited, which has water cooled heads, which helps for sure. But I've done some cooling mods to it. It's a stage 2 kit. It has like a 480 cam in it. It's got lifters and adjustable push rods, bigger manifold, fuel modal header, tab performance 4.5 inch slip-ons with medium baffles. But the cooling mods I did, I've got the long cycle performance, I think it is what it's called, permanent, or the hard oil filter, which is cleanable, and it's a high flow. It's got a magnetic built into it. It's got cooling fans on it as well too. Cooling fins, I should say, not fans. So they say that brings the temps down the oil 25 degrees. I believe it after using it. And I have the Love Jug Mighty Might fans. Those things are awesome. Love them. They look good as well too. And I did the 1.5 inch tank lift on the front and the rear. And it also has the wind deflectors that push the air back down on the head. All those things help out. I mean, the cam and the header pipe with no cat stuff. All those things. A lot of people do that stuff, and that helps a lot as well too. But I'll give you a scenario where it didn't for somebody I rode with, because they didn't have any cooling mods. So God's honest truth, I'm down there in that heat, and I've got an infrared with me. And I checked the temps going down the throughs just to make sure everything's consistent. I was between 190 and 205, even on the rear head. Running 70 miles an hour down the highway. Then when we went on some poker runs, things were we're close. I'm still not running too up. We're just single rider, and I never got above 214 every time we stopped. You can stop at separate places on the poker runs. But there was one group that I got hooked up with. We rode together through the poker runs. This guy had a Street Glide. I think it was like 2018, 2019, and he had a big bore kit on, a 128 kit. Just got it done. I think his power measure was hooked up. They had digital gauges as well too, so you could tell his head temps. And he got on it a little bit. And my bike's juiced up as well too. And we got talking before we realized. He's like, "Yeah, I just got this done. It's a 128 kit. It's got a big cam in it, and exhaust." And I said, "Man, it looks really nice." It was a nice looking bike, and sounded good. We went riding, rode for 15, 20 miles. Bikes got hot. It was hot out, and we were next to each other. We both cracked it. And he said he's been riding for a long time, so a lot of it's the rider as well too. And my bike walked him. Just a stage 2 kit, no head work or anything of that sort. And we did it 3 or 4 times, and it's just every time I could do whatever I wanted to his bike. And we come to side, he goes, "There's no way that's just a stage." I said, "I'll tell you." I said, I can't show it to you, but that's what it is. So he was pretty upset, and I said, "I'll tell you something. I said, I see your temperatures. We come up to the stop signs or the red light together, and I can see your digital readout on your gauge cluster. And it was 340 to 370 on his temperatures, his head temps. Now, granted, it's a street light. He doesn't have the water-cooled heads, which is probably good for 30 degrees. But he's making all this power and whacking this thing. It's hot out. And it's just a dog. It's pulling timing is what it's doing. So you really didn't understand that. You know, obviously a lot of people don't. You know, they pay to get the money, or pay to get the work done on the bikes and expect them to run a certain way. And when they're tuned and it's ideal conditions, they got fans blowing on and stuff like that. They get a dyno number and they think that's what the power is going to be. And it is in ideal conditions. But the way this works is that it takes spark, which is timing, air, your intakes, and fuel, you know, injection systems or whatever. So it takes those three to make power, or make a motor run, a combustion motor. And the easiest thing, and the thing that you have to do in a tune, either from Harley Davidson from the factory or from a tuner aftermarket, when a motorcycle hits a certain temperature, you have to start taking timing away from the tune, because if you don't, the air is so hot that the fuel and air, the fuel is what cools the motor, believe it or not. That's how it cools the motor down. The fuel is coming in there. But if you have too much timing and it's hot air, it doesn't detonate correctly, or it doesn't explode correctly, so it's detonating, and there's a good chance that you can take a valve or a piston out because it's not the proper fuel with the timing. So the tunes, Harley or your tuner, it's built into it. So at a certain temperature, there's thresholds. So if it hits 350 degrees, 300 degrees, or whatever, they may pull a degree of timing. It hits 350 degrees, they may pull 2 degrees. Whatever the scenario is, I'm not sure, you know, what the tables are, but that's how it escalates up in pulling timing as the temperatures rise, so it can dump proof, so it doesn't blow the motor up. So back to this guy. So I was explaining that to him, and he goes, well, I had a stage 2 and it felt really good when I first had it, and then come riding weather, you know, it just felt doggy. So I just he said he figured he'd go spend money and get a big bore kit. So he spent almost $7,000 or $8,000 by the time he got done with labor. They really hammered him, whoever did it. And I said, you know, you could have just kept the stage 2 and did the cooling modifications and kept that power. So if you spend $6,000 or $7,000 and pick up another 15 or 18 horsepower and 20 pounds of torque, but if you're 370 degrees and it's pulling 3 or 4 degrees of timing or whatever it's pulling, and you're losing 30% of your power, you're down to 8 or 9 horsepower and pounds of torque, you know, for $6,000 when you could have spent under $1,000, got the fans, the tank lift, did the oil filter, and you know, dropped the temperatures. They're not going to be quite as low as mine because he didn't have the water cooled heads, but he probably could have got them down in a reasonable area, 250, 260, which is huge. It makes a big difference, and he wouldn't have had to pay for all the power. So at the end of the day, he could have kept the stage 2, put some cooling modifications on that motor, and not spent the money and had the same power, because he's not losing it. I mean, it's the power you made ideally when they tuned it, but you're not going to lose that power as you keep the motor cool. It's like it's free, because you're not losing it. You're not spending more money on making more power, because every time you make more power, you're making more heat. One doesn't go without the other, and it has to happen that way. But if you don't have the supporting modifications to handle that, just like in the race car business, you know, if I didn't have the race suspension or the race transmission, you know, the correct rod main bearings and pistons, and then, you know, this power and heat, something's going to give, and it's always the weakest link. Heat is the biggest enemy of any motor. It always has been, and lack of maintenance. But do the right thing. Put the supporting modifications on the motor, and you're going to keep your power. Even on a stock motor, they get real weak when they get hot. You got to keep them cool. So my personal recommendation, after doing this for so many years, spend the money on a cooling modification before you try to make any power, because that way you're going to keep it, and it's going to add to the longevity of your motor. You know, you're going to find out you don't have to spend as much money to make the same power as somebody else going down the road that spent a bunch on modification, because they're losing it if they don't have the cooling modifications. So do the right thing. Spend money on supporting modifications to make your the bike that you love last for a long time. Your boater will love you for it.